Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine, or it can be psychological. You put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible can be done by you. They co-founded a company called SMACKIN Snacks. Who decides to do sunflower seeds? It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. So I said, hey, would you be willing to share your story and give some insights about being an entrepreneur? And he was like, absolutely. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose. Get your pen and paper out. Yeah. I'm taking notes. Paralysis to purpose. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and I tell you what, if you're an entrepreneur or you think you want to be one, today's episode is just for you. And if you're a first-time listener, welcome. For those of you who are returners, you know how to help me out. I say this every time because I do get to interview some of the most inspiring and intriguing people literally in the world. And today is no exception. I got a couple guys here, recent University of Minnesota grads. I don't know how they met in college, but they'll probably tell us that. And they co-founded a company called SMACKIN Snacks. There's a bunch of sunflower seeds. Who decides to do sunflower seeds? These two guys did. Cole Schaefer is one of the co-founders, and I was fortunate enough to teach Cole when he was a high school student. Isn't that right? How'd you do in my class, Cole? You know what? Let me finish before you answer that. He ended up meeting Brian Waddick also while he was at the University of Minnesota. And together they co-founded this company that's doing really well. I saw a post on LinkedIn a few weeks back, and I was like, wow, this sounds exciting. And I hadn't talked to Cole in a while. So I said, hey, would you be willing to come on the podcast and share your story and give some insights about being an entrepreneur? And he was like, absolutely. Here we are, and let me just welcome Cole and Brian to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast.
Thanks for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah.
Who's the talker now? Because Cole looked over at Brian, and Brian looked over at Cole.
It depends on the day. You know?
It depends on the question, too.
Well, let me start with you, Cole. I want to talk to you about being in the space of an entrepreneur, because it's, at least based on what I know from you, this is not something that is brand new. You've always been involved in stuff. And one of the things that I found intriguing was even before you started high school, you had launched out and started interviewing athletes. Could you talk a little bit about that and why you did that and how you got started in being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So back in middle school, I had there's this MLB blog site where you could write blogs on there. And most people wrote about really, I don't know, kind of like their experiences of going to a ballpark. I wanted to figure out a way that I could write or create an experience that was unique from what most people were doing. So I just wanted to start interviewing minor league players who I thought would be eventually MLB All-Stars. So I did that for about a year and a half. And I interviewed 3 guys, and 2 of the 3 turned out to be MLB All-Stars. One of them, he was the number 1 overall pick, just didn't really pan out. But it was a really fun experience. It was cool. I really refined a lot of my English skills, just how to communicate with people in general. And it was a really fun experience. And it was just a passion project, but really opened me up to the experience of creating and just making stuff for other people to enjoy.
So for those who are listening, you don't know what MLB stands for. It's Major League Baseball. And so he was interviewing guys that some went on to have great success as baseball players. A lot of guys in middle school, and people in middle school, should I say, we do lemonade stands and stuff like that. You start interviewing Major League Baseball prospects. How did that come about?
Yeah, I always was pretty entrepreneurial. As a kid, I would collect baseball cards and get card shows on the weekends when I was a really little kid. And then I also in middle school, I made locker shelves and would sell them to classmates. I ran a baseball clinic at my local little league, where I would host private lessons in my backyard. And it was $10 a lesson for 30 minutes, which was fantastic money as a middle schooler. So I was always just doing random little things to make money that I was passionate about, or I knew something about. I was always following my passion, which there was always sometimes money involved, sometimes not.
Brian, have you always been an entrepreneur? And before you guys started this company, was this your first dive in?
I say my entrepreneur days certainly aren't as depthful as Cole. But I think being an entrepreneur and being a salesman certainly go hand in hand. I was definitely a salesman when I was a kid. Very stubborn, very competitive. And when I want to get something, I'd be very persuasive or find a way to get it. And yeah, I learned a lot from my dad, who grew up to be a pretty successful businessman in the aviation industry. So I just really watched him grow this company in multiple roles, as well as I sold like little popcorn for Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts, wreaths, whatever I really needed to sell to get to whatever my end goal was at that time when I was a little kid. I'd say certainly when I came to college, when I really refined what I wanted to do. When I met Cole, we together certainly had some early stage company experience, whether it was with a Series A tech startup freshman year or other just side projects that were beginning stages of our collaboration as business partners before SMACKIN. So yeah,
those weren't as successful either.
No, clearly. Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because clearly you both said you didn't always have success, but you tried a lot of things and eventually something did become more successful for you. What's the most difficult thing about starting a business?
Honestly, like just starting and like being consistent every single day and repeating the actions that you need to do to get better and to improve the business. Because it's like there's no one really holding you accountable necessarily. Like it's what you make of it. And like for some people, they're not capable of necessarily holding themselves accountable to do the actions that are necessary.
So you said accountability, and the first thing you said was starting it. What do you mean by starting it? And then when you talked about some of the things that you need to be held accountable for, that you need to do, the steps you need to do, the things you need to repeat, what would be some of those types of things? And either of you can chime in on that.
A lot of people are just like talk. Like, so for example, like we have a few different businesses that we run, and like there's some very simple ones that like it's very profitable businesses, very simple, hands off. And we'll tell like a friend and they get super excited. Oh my gosh, I should do this too. And then comes like actually doing it and like setting it up and like laying down the groundwork. And I don't know, that seems like a lot of work. It seems like a good idea and concept. What if it doesn't work? When it actually comes to like doing, like a lot of people aren't willing to take the step.
And you hear it a lot where ideas are
a dime a dozen.
Yeah, it's all about execution, and that's very truthful. It's all about how you execute, how you go about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more and dig into that some. As an author, I know one of the most challenging things for me to do was to actually sit down and start writing. There was no way I was going to get a book done until I sat down and start writing. And it was a challenge for me because for me, it was a space I had not operated in before. And so I had no direction, no real clear understanding of what to do. So I had to start moving forward. For you guys, now you said you run a number of businesses, and today we're going to focus on Smackin' Snacks. If someone's listening today and they're like, I'd like to start a business, what is the practical, what are like 2 or 3 practical things that you would recommend that they do to begin their business?
I think it's certainly important to begin with a goal in mind. Know where like you roughly want to end up. And I can promise you, you're not going to end up there, but it's not like a linear road, and you have a lot to learn, but it's really good just to have a goal in mind, like a high up goal that's hard to achieve that you can start working towards. Then you have to look at the small steps, the small incremental steps that you work toward the giant goal. I think is a good way to start.
Yeah, I couldn't have said any better.
So goal setting is important, and having goals, and even though they may be lofty, so it sounds like you also need to have short-term, medium-term, long-term goals so that you can have some measurables along the way. I know that when I was writing my book, when I got a chapter done, I was like, man, I got the chapter done. And so I was able to celebrate some successes along the way as I got to the finished product. Is that something that you guys have to do also?
Yeah, I think that positive reinforcement, just achieving those small W's, small steps, is really giant, but you have to come in prepared not to have those reinforcements right away. And being an entrepreneur is being prepared to fail multiple times with someone there to reinforce you to keep going.
You talk about the importance of learning, and I'll say learning instead of failing. What's the most important lesson you guys have learned on your journeys together and also individually in terms of the road of an entrepreneur?
Just accepting like failure for what it is and accepting it as a learning experience rather than as a failure, what you said. And also being realistic with yourself and like what you're capable of is super important. And also like just not caring what other people think too. It's hard starting a business, and like especially a sunflower seed business. I'm sure when I started, most people were probably thinking it's pretty.
It's not as sexy.
It's not like a Google or a Facebook or something. We obviously had a bigger vision than that. But yeah, it's just like putting your head down, working, and like not caring about what people think at all.
I remember reading something about you, Cole, and you actually stopped the interviewing process of Major League Baseball prospects once you got in high school for the exact reason you talked about. People were throwing so much shade on you and hating what you were doing. And as a young person, that's very difficult as a teenager, an adolescent, dealing with the aspect of, that's almost a form of bullying. How did that help harden you or get you prepared for what you do now? Because back then you talked about that was a very difficult experience, but now you know that it's not as important what people think about what you do, important as it is what you think about what you do. How did that help you?
I remember back then it was really hard, and I felt like what other people thought of me mattered, and like that it was like important and like my happiness, and I should deem what other people said about me to be pretty valid and accurate. Like I gave up on it, and looking back on it, obviously I can't change anything. Hindsight's 2020, should have continued. I was doing something pretty cool. There was nothing to be concerned or nervous about. I learned something about myself. I was proud of what I did. But yeah, it's just putting your head down and realizing, just focus on what you're passionate about. It'll all work out.
You guys started this business during a pandemic. And I want to talk a little bit about how important it is to realize opportunity when you see it. Because a lot of times you hear about the pandemic and everyone was talking about how things are shut down. There's no opportunities. In the middle of the pandemic, you guys are blowing up. Can you talk about the importance of timing?
I wish I could say we timed a lot of that stuff, but I think it was about being the time that we put into it, and we eventually caught the wave, all the work, etc. It was really strange. We came out of the pandemic, we made quite a few pivots because of it, but like all in all, it was a giant
blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it was really good for the growth of the company, and it's like just awareness. You saw the transition to e-commerce and social media, and that's where we really found our bread and butter. COVID was great. There's a lot of resources available if you were scrappy enough to look for them. We were constantly looking for resources. We saw really great grants that we were able to capture, whether it's state or federal, really good debt financing.
It also created like a constraint on us that made us better in the end of the day. We couldn't go the retail route anymore. So we had to figure out how are we going to sell this inventory. So we had to shift our focus to direct to consumer, which at the end of the day ended up being a much better thing for our brand long term. Just being able to control the consumer experience at the start, being able to like build a much bigger social presence that we wouldn't have necessarily focused on. That way, when we do move into retail, people will recognize who we are instead of if they were just our first shot at them.
You said something I think that's so interesting. You said that the constraints cause you to grow in a different space. You weren't allowed to, because things were shut down, to take the traditional route that some would have taken. And probably your success wouldn't be as great as it is right now because you would have been in the wrong market for what you were trying to do.
That's a perfect way to summarize everything. Is we were focused on retail, and as a small company that no one knows about or knew about at the time, we would have gotten slaughtered. The constraints forced us to pivot, and we found our success in different channels.
Now we know when we move into retail, like that we'll be successful because we have such a big social presence at this point.
I want to get to the social presence. And before we take a quick break, you guys went to college and you have your degrees and all that. What was your parents thinking about when you said to them, yeah, we got our degrees done and we're going to sell sunflower seeds?
Mine have been pretty supportive. As long as like I'm alive and have a roof over my head, it's okay. I'm doing what I love. So they're pretty supportive.
I think we're both lucky to have pretty supportive parents. I think definitely their perception changes and evolves throughout the time. We certainly started this business in the middle of college, and I'm sure they were like, oh, are these kids getting jobs once they graduate? Is this kind of just like a hobby, selling sunflower seeds, roasting your apartments, what have you? But as it progressed, we raised a small investment round coming out of college. I think a lot of steps made it a little bit more legitimate. They're very accepting, and they love that we're taking a whack at something that we're passionate about.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how you guys started off the business, the SMACKIN Sunflower Seed business, and how you grew it after that. Because the things that you've told us thus far is that You took advantage of every opportunity you could that you knew about, but you had to research and dig and really find out ways to put yourself in a position to be successful, which is something I think everyone needs to know, because success doesn't just happen. You need to prepare for it. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the company itself, what sets it apart from everything else, and the TikTok. Something happened on TikTok that helped you guys blow up. So we'll be right back with Cole and Brian right after this break.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast with our guests, co-founders of SMACKIN Sunflower Company. Where did this idea come from?
As kids, we were both pretty big baseball players, and like being a big baseball player means that you eat sunflower seeds all the time. But in the industry as a kid, like it was literally all the same, like barbecue, plain ranch sunflower seeds. And it was literally the same for like 20 years. And it never changed. While like other industries like popcorn or pretzels, pistachios, like anything, innovation all the time. So we saw like an opportunity that we could innovate in the industry with unique flavors and lower sodium. And it was like a unique opportunity in the snack industry that we had prior experience with. So something we were comfortable with, and it was something that we knew there was an opportunity to disrupt in.
So you said lower sodium and different flavors.
Yeah, those are the two big kind of key points that we try to drive home with our brand.
Did you do a bunch of testing, have pilot runs with people in your dorms or apartments when you were in college? How did you come about to know that this had a chance?
It took a while to know that this had a chance. I'd say it took a year. Like we would make them. So we would create a list of a bunch of different flavor ideas, and we get the samples for them, and then we'd make them. Then we just ask our friends to try them and tell us what they thought of it. But it's not like the best like trial and error process by any means. So like we eventually, after a few months of doing that, like we got a product. We had like 3 different flavors, and the packaging was terrible. Like it didn't even, you couldn't even tell what the product was necessarily. It said SMACKIN Snacks, and then it just had the flavor, and you could like see it through a window. But it didn't even say that there were sunflower seeds anywhere. So it took us a long time to like even figure out like what we were doing, like how to pick out like who our consumers are, how to like address like the consumers through our packaging, how to make what our product is even like the messaging even clear. So yeah, it was just like trial and error and like having people try it after we got that MVP in hand.
So when you did that, when you go to your website, it is a bright, it's colorful, it draws you in. And that's part of what you were talking about, it where it took you some time to figure that out, because you need to stand out in the world of sunflower seeds. And there are a lot of sunflower seeds. How did you start? I remember hearing something about you were able to raise $10,000 or something. And did you have to grow sunflowers?
I did a agronomy class where in my lab we could plant anything we wanted. And I had my group do sunflower seeds. But in the class, we didn't even get to finish because of COVID. But anyways, back to the point. Like we put together about $10,000 and we picked up sunflower seeds and like packaging. That was about it. And we just went at it. And
a lot of learning.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like lots of mistakes, a lot of constant iteration. Let me tell you, out of that 10,000 that we spent, we wasted about 80% of it. At least. We made some legal steps, got trademarks, got the LLC officially registered, what have you. And then we started testing. We were in our apartment using our stove with our pans, testing out each flavor,
see what worked
from the company. And eventually we made the move to a commercial kitchen, a local commercial kitchen. And that's where we were able to continue to produce, test. We were able to make a lot more. When we came out farmers markets during that time, we were testing and seeing what people liked in the farmers markets eventually. And then we went to a couple retail locations. And you just continue to test over. It takes a long time. It was really hard for us to go from apartment to commercial kitchen and then to where we are now on an industrial level.
So you talk about the importance of small beginnings and that every step in the process matters. Our listeners know some of my stories when I had a chance to coach at Duke University with the men's basketball team, I started off by filling up water bottles and doing laundry. But that led to other things. It sounds like you were in the kitchen with a pan and a stove, and that's all you had to start with. But you took what you had and you made it work. Do either of you have a background in cooking or spices or anything?
My dad was a chef, and like he's in the food industry and product development. So as a kid growing up, I watched him develop a bunch of products like from our kitchen table and see it go into grocery stores. He worked at a seasoning company, so we had a connection to a seasoning supplier. We found sunflower seeds online. We found a packaging supplier. We just put together the supply chain through that. Looking stuff up online, information's cheap. I was just doing a little bit of research and poking around.
You said information is cheap.
Yeah, information is cheap. We're in 2022. Everything's free online. You just go to YouTube, Google. You can learn how to do literally anything.
That right there is a mouthful, seriously, because I think for years, information wasn't inexpensive. You really had to either have a connection or someone or lots of money to get information. And what you just said is part of the generational switch and change that I think business is undergoing. It wasn't uncommon for entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs back in the day, but now I look at both of you. You guys are going to never work for anybody.
The only real job I had was like a restaurant server and bartender. And that's even that. I didn't like someone telling me what to do.
For a very large majority of the time, we did, we cooked, packaged orders, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it took a while.
So you did every aspect of it, from the research to the ordering, the preparation, the packing, the delivery. So you went from your kitchen, and then you went to a commercial kitchen. And then you said you also started by going to farmers markets in the area. Was that where you started your sales side of this before you ended up going straight e-commerce?
That was the first sales channel.
2019, we were just in farmers markets and 2 local gas stations. And then 2020 is when we made the pivot and saw our sales being like 97% online.
So let's talk about that. You scaled up because you now have an industrial place. And again, those steps are important for listeners to understand, is that you guys didn't start where you are right now. A lot of times people get to see the finished product and they have no idea of all the steps and all the work and all the missteps that took place for them to get to where they are now. Let's talk about the transition from your kitchen to where you are now. You talked about the importance of the internet and social media. What was the role that social media played to get you to where you are? And specifically, what was the one event that let everybody know who you guys are and what you do?
There's been a few moments in particular, but there was one in particular moment was last year, or I guess 2020 at this point. I get all my years mixed up since COVID. But it was like a month before we graduated. I would say we probably, between Instagram and TikTok, we had like maybe 1,000 followers total on everything. I was saying, like, who would want to watch videos about sunflower seeds? It seemed we don't belong on here. Yeah, it just wasn't working. And we finally had a video that went viral. 75,000 views. And it was like our biggest sales day ever.
So that was definitely
an aha moment for us. Where it was like, oh, this is something that can work. And this is something we need to put our attention and efforts towards. And the second we did, it was kind of no holding back on social media. And we've just really kind of seen some monumental growth ever since then.
How have you stayed at that level? Because it's one thing to get a bunch of new followers and listeners and to have an increase in sales, but to sustain success, what are the things that you guys have had to do?
Consistency and staying committed to the end goal. What did I do yesterday and how can I do it better today? And then just consistently doing that every single day.
So consistently improving on what you do is what.
And admitting that what you did the day before probably sucked. You have to constantly be getting better, be willing to improve yourself and reinvent the wheel almost every single day.
Hey, Brian, what would you say is the biggest failure you guys have had in this process where you've had to really say, man, we really blew that. Let's try something. We got to try a different way.
There's so many. And I'm wondering what he's thinking. Because I'm thinking something, I'm like, man, are we thinking the same thing? There's countless times. One like funny time that we went practically just all in, all our money, everything in on this packaging. And
Yeah.
and hindsight's 2020, but all in on packaging, all our money, $5,000, what have you. And it arrives like a month later, and we're looking at it, opened the boxes, brought it up to our apartment. I think it was like maybe 8 to 10 boxes of it.
Yep.
And we're looking at it.
All of our money.
Yeah, we're looking at, is this the right size? Is this what we wanted? And we're looking at, and then we're finding like grammatical errors. We're finding like mess ups on the back, like mess ups on the nutrition. Like what have we really screwed up?
What's the greatest lesson from that one that you learned?
You can't rely on everyone to like make sure they double check and it's all correct. You have to be the one that triple checks. You have to be the one that you have the hand in the process, making sure you know what's being done.
At the end of the day, it's yours.
Oh, it's yours. Yeah. It's your money. It's yours. You're the one that's going to care most about it. So I think that's certainly
that's the lesson I learned from that too. We would be nowhere without each other in this business.
So I was going to ask you, have you guys added staff or another set of eyes? Do you guys have coaches or someone, a third set of eyes that you can talk to help you in some of these things?
Certainly there's no employees. It's just, Cole and I, we rely on contractors and what have you for work, but we do have a minority stakeholder that have updates and what have you. And so that's certainly someone that's knowledgeable with, inside the business, what have you, that we can bounce ideas off of in a third opinion.
Yeah. And just also like to hold us accountable too is have regular meetings. That way it's like, all right, here's where this is. Here's what we talked about last month. Here's how that's going. It's just good to have someone there to consistently keep us accountable. Not that we don't for each other, but overall for big picture.
Yeah.
So what is your hottest flavor?
I'd say the garlic parmesan.
Yeah.
That's got to be our most popular flavor. Yeah. Original is such a popular flavor. Garlic parmesan is definitely the most popular seasoned one.
Original, you said? Is that just...
We call it the OG because that just sounds boring. Like, why would we? What's the point of being boring? So ours is called the OG. But yeah, we have an original.
Is that like plain? Is that what OG stand is?
Like a super low sodium, just a plain sunflower seed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I probably would enjoy those. Did you think of your sunflower flavors based on like chicken wing flavors or anything like that? Because people love, what'd you just say, garlic parm or what that is?
Garlic parmesan.
Yeah. I don't do that, but people love it.
Oh, it's good. But yeah, you just kind of think about, or at least the way that we do it, it's like, okay, what are some types of foods we like? What are some like rubs we like on things? What are some like different ethnic foods that we like? And just see how that would, are there seasonings for this? Okay, then let's try it.
And definitely just looking at what's trendy and what's like on the come up. And I think that's certainly something that we do different is we're certainly like in on like the new demographics, the new taste, what they prefer. And like a lot of our consumers and a lot of consumers just in the market are Gen Z. And so they prefer something like unique, maybe like a spice of a dash of something new. And that's what we're trying to do.
What would you say is your most exotic flavor?
I think no question, cinnamon sugar.
Yeah.
That's like a dessert, very flavor that no one really has.
It's very unique.
Yeah.
On a sunflower seed?
Yeah, it's good.
Oh yeah.
Can you give us a little hint of, is there like a new thing coming out that we need to be looking forward to?
We got a lot of new stuff coming very soon. We're super pumped about it. Yeah, we can drop a couple. We won't be like super specific on what it is, but we definitely have a new flavor coming out. We have new packaging, whether it's a small tubular 1 ounce single serve. So we're really excited about that. Kind of let people sample our seeds for a lower cost. And then we got our typical 4 ounce bag with the resealable. I think that's really important.
And then also on top of that too, we're launching an NFT project where a part of the utility with that is that people get free sunflower seeds for life, which is super, super cool. So you get every single year, you get your annual supply that you can like access for free on our website. And on top of that, you get fractional ownership in our community DAO, which is like our decentralized wallet that people can vote on like what we're going to do with the funds for it, whether it be like improving the business, doing an in real life event with the founders, whatever it be.
Could you just give a brief, Brian, is this where you come in? Because I don't know if the marketing guy can understand.
We're actually both pretty deep in the crypto space, but essentially NFT is a non-fungible token. Essentially, it just proves ownership in something, and it can be anything.
It's verified on a permanent blockchain, and like that social contract is what our project is focused on. Is creating a contract to provide value for people who are a fan of our brand.
Do you get a lot of repeat customers, or how do you grow the business?
Because we're like constantly growing, so we're constantly acquiring customers. So we have a lot of repeat customers, but
as the business continues to ramp up, our return customer rate has grown, and it's starting to become like a substantial part of our sales. But historically, it's all been on our marketing, organic, some paid, but primarily organic marketing to acquire new customers.
Let's talk a little bit more about e-commerce and the importance of e-commerce to your business versus the traditional retail where you go get in a brick and mortar and you try to get your product on the shelves where the competition is fierce and the cost is very high. Why is e-commerce so important for what you're doing?
It's nice, like when someone's on our website, they're there to shop for us. They're not shopping next to David's, Biggs, Giants, all our competitors. They're there for SMAKIN Sunflower Seeds. And with that as well, we're developing a really strong online presence and just like presence in general of just like sunflower seed consumers. So that way, by the time that we reach retail, when we're next to David's, Giants, and Biggs, they'll already recognize us and they'll feel comfortable taking our bag and purchasing it instead of the normal David's that they get because they've already seen us online 20 times before. Whereas if we just initially started out there next to the David's, Giants, or Biggs and they've never seen us before, they're way less likely to take a risk on trying a new product they're unfamiliar with and never even had a chance to interact with.
Yeah. And I think it's a trend ever since maybe 2010. Like you're seeing CPG brands able to utilize and like essentially level out the playing field because it's a pay to play in retail and what have you. So online really allows the small brands to level out the playing field and garner attention at a lower cost of capital, which is really great. And that's where we found our bread and butter. We do things that it takes large corporations a long time to do, or they just don't do. And an example is TikTok. You don't see too many very large corporations, especially in our industry, doing TikToks. And if they do, it's going to take them like a month to produce. And,
and they're really bad at it.
It's out of touch. And small brands can be very engaging with today's consumers, which I think allows them to grow larger.
Who's the creative one here that does the TikTok? Do you guys do all of your social media marketing on your own, or do you have people that help you with that?
We do it ourselves. It's 100% in-house. We actually help that's one of our side businesses is we like consult other businesses with TikTok and social media and just web development because we've done a pretty good job for it ourselves, we'd say. Honestly, it's just like Brian and I just bouncing ideas back and forth. And most of the ideas kind of suck, but every once in a while one will stick.
Yeah.
And that's how you elevate the brand is just keep coming up with viral ideas.
And we don't recreate the
No, we do not.
We like to look at what's worked and put our own spin on it. Once we started doing that's when we started seeing exponential growth on social media.
So you guys have actually grown to the point now where you outsource, for lack of a better word, the things that you two had to do when you began. And I think there's a great lesson in that as well, is that there's some point where your time becomes too valuable to do some of the things that someone else could do. And you have to be comfortable with that. And that's not a knock on anyone else's time. It's just that you two right now don't have time to be roasting and mixing. And is that right?
I think that's a very important thing to just touch on at the end. We were busy, focused with just making and producing the seeds that we didn't have time to sell. And that's what we're like most.
That's what we're best at.
Yeah, that's where like we can leverage our best human capital is selling and building relations and calls and supplying.
Just developing.
Yeah, it's not making the seeds or fulfilling orders. And so thankfully we've offloaded both those so that we're not making the seeds, we're not fulfilling orders. We're very focused on just marketing the company and doing what needs to be done.
Handling the operations and putting out fires.
And how do you manage to keep the quality of your product, the mission of your organization, the vision of your organization intact when you aren't as hands-on as you once were?
So we still, at the end of the day, like we make all the decisions on the product. Like we decide the flavors, we decide, like we get a bunch of like samples and we can decide, let's put X more of this, Y more of this. And at the end of the day, we know that they're doing a better job at it than we would.
Before we end, here on the podcast, we always talk about perspective, perseverance, and partnership. I'm going to ask you guys what comes to mind when you hear the word perspective And how important has that been for you guys in your business?
Yeah, I think perspective is really everything outside of business too, whether you look political, what have you. I think perspective is everything. And within business, we've learned both the detriments of being narrow-minded, narrow-sighted. We learned early on from mentors, from people that have done this journey before on what to look for and what things that you can fall into. And
Yeah.
I think perspective is everything, is looking at what the large goal is, what small goals it takes to get there, and bouncing those ideas off with people that you know and have been there before.
I think one of the things you mentioned before that when I thought about perspective was being able to take a look at what you've actually done and realize, okay, you know what, maybe I didn't do that so well. And that's part of perspective too, is self-reflection, and where you take a moment to take a real look at what you're doing. Perseverance. When you hear the word perseverance, what does that mean?
It means doing it until literally you cannot anymore. And I feel like we've done nothing but that with this business. There have been so many times where it would have been so easy to just give up or quit. But we had a goal in mind, and we still do. And we weren't going to give up until we got to it.
Cole and I have always had the shared mindset that either this thing crashes and burns or this thing's going to the moon. And we just keep going each and every day until one of the two happens.
And then finally, I'm looking at the screen, and this is partnerships personified. What's the importance of partnerships and relationships to you guys?
We share a common goal that every single day we wake up and our mission is to complete that goal. We hold each other accountable for it. We have passion. We both share a passion. And when two people who really care about the same exact thing are working towards a common goal, you can accomplish anything. It's crazy. And it's something that you don't really think about a lot if you're not in a relationship like we have. But a powerful partnership is nothing else like it.
You've mentioned the word passion a number of times today. And I want to ask you, what does that mean? What is passion? And then I also want you guys to answer the question about purpose, because I think passion and purpose are two different things. So let's start with passion, and then hit me up with what your purpose is.
I think a passion is something that's a shiny object, something that you really like, something that you continually want to learn more. I certainly think a purpose is higher meaning. I think most people's purposes is just to have a more to generate external benefit for people around themselves, just to help people. I think those two differ. And I think you can do the purpose through your passion. You can help people, build external benefit through doing things that you like.
I would say that having a passion is what drives you. I'm passionate about what we are building. So every single morning, I'm happy to get out of bed. I'm passionate about it. And it's what drives me to want to do things without necessarily there even being a reward. Something that I'm genuinely happy to do. And purpose that's a loaded question. I don't know if there's purpose. Sometimes you have to find purpose in the little things in life and just pursuing happiness, pursuing just a life that you want, and coming to a goal or finding a goal and working towards it.
We talked about the passion about why do you get up in the morning and do what you do? Because you can be passionate about something that's not good. And so you guys,
oh yeah.
And that's not the case here. And then the one thing that I thought Brian said that I really believe in is that every person's purpose must serve somebody else. And there must be an external benefit for someone else living because of you and because of what you do. And I think that's pretty important. And you guys are still young on your journey. I wasn't clear about what I was supposed to do until I got older. And I realized I was to make the quality of other people's lives better with what I do, what I say, what I speak. I had you in class, and I think you probably figured that out, Cole, that I really wanted you guys I wanted your life to be better because you were in my class.
It really was. It truly was. We all enjoyed you.
And that's part of what you guys will find out. You'll find that there's something more than just making different flavors of sunflower seeds. You'll get to what that is and why this is what you do as well. So kudos to you guys. Now, listen, we got to go. But how do people get a hold of you, follow you on social media if they wanted to have you come and speak to a high school? How do they get a hold of you guys?
SMACKINSunflowerSeeds.com is our website. All of our social medias is SMACKIN Sunflower Seeds. And there's an email, general contact us on our website, and we're one of the two people that will get back to you.
This has been great. It's great to catch up with you, Cole. I haven't seen you in, 6-7 years or whatever it's been. And Brian, anyone that Cole connects with, I guess, is a good guy. So it's sure nice to meet you as well. This is David Cooks reminding you until the next episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
I got home, my parents are like, well, why are you home already? And I said, I don't feel good. I went and laid down in my bed, and it was at that point that as soon as I laid down, I was paralyzed from my neck down. I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs. My mom came in and she said, what's going on? I said, I don't have any feeling. And she grabbed my foot. She goes, do you feel this? No. Grab my arm, no. They called the local EMS and they rushed me to Hartford Hospital, about 15 minutes away. And they started doing all these tests. And at the time doing all the tests, my temperature kept rising significantly, 103, 104, 105, 106. And they said, we're going to med flight your son to Freighter. We're not sure that we can save him. We don't know what's wrong.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
And I said, I'm not leaving this hospital until I see Coach Bertolis. So that tells you the kind of impact that he had on me. And I remember laying there. He got there about 2 minutes before we left. I remember seeing his face clear as day. And they wheeled me out to that helicopter and they flew me to Milwaukee. At the same time, Coach Bertolis is with my parents driving to Freighter, not knowing what they're going to see when they get there.
Paralysis to purpose.